My father gave me a camera when I was 7, 8 years old, and I started making small films. And I'm still there. I'm very conservative in that point of view. I went to high school, as everybody, to a Catholic school, and then as I became something like a Marxist, I got interested in theology. So I went for a while to the Catholic University to study a little bit of theology, and then at the same time that I made I went to the university for studying laws, and then I became interested in cinema and theater, and I started studying theater for a while, and I found some money to make a film in Chile, and then I went to Argentina where I studied for 1 year, and I think I never finished. At that time, I didn't finish any study. I don't have any degrees. I never liked the world of theater because it looks too much like the church, like a convent, and that was the reason why I prefer cinema, who look more like the army, or not exactly army, but let's say guerrillas or pirates. Then I came to America just to study, but I didn't feel comfortable in the university, so I went to Mexico, where I started writing screenplays for soap operas, TV for a while, and then I went back to Chile, where I started making screenplays for TV, and then in the middle of the 60s, 64, 65, I started making films. I was interested, I was obsessed by the idea of making film without any kind of conflicts, maybe because of this sort of dogmatic religion. It's the religion of conflict in filmmaking. And for a while, I've tried to argue against that and trying to work stories without conflict, making structure take from poetry, or from other narrative structure who doesn't need conflict, like epic structure, etc. So in this film, simply I playing games of reversing situation, putting in the first apparently secondary element in the first, as in primer plano, how it's called. Giving more importance to elements that are supposed to be secondary elements, destroying the pyramid of narrative pyramid. You know, there are so many techniques to make feel to the audience that guy is the protagonist, who is the leading role, or I don't know, the most important actor, and you have to be interested in him and not in another one. So it's very funny when you use that elements, and so everybody look to somebody, and then he's not the most important. It's another one who was turning around in the second level. So that kind, I let's say, invented hundreds of these games, and I put it together in this film. So it was a very important moment for cinema. Was the moment that the Swiss cinema appeared and many new filmmakers. It was the same prize we went together. I went together with Alain Tanner. Was his first film, and there was the first film of Pamphilov too, and Hugo Santiago and many other filmmakers that were making very different levels the same kind of research, let's call it that, trying to destroy trying to forget about this dogmatic way of telling stories through cinema, without being really experimental. The Chilean political situation has this particularity of being very very complicated and very impossible to be understood from outside up from other countries. And Allende maybe was the only case where everybody could feel that was a situation that you could understand. But it wasn't like that. It was so, there was an accumulation of local situations. And of course, there was a moment very important for Latin Americans. It's the moment where there were movement, revolutionary movement everywhere. And there was the possibility of build a new society. I was something like a mediator, but I was in the party, not in the government. Okay. Just trying to develop cinematographic activities in different levels without making political films, propaganda film, agitprop. I hated agitprop as it was made, and I think it was necessary sometimes as commercials are necessary, but not more than that. But I made political film, which is a different thing. These political films were not propaganda. There was film trying to develop, trying to show a political paradox, where the system, where our ideology failed. In that, where I thought that there was a failure or a mistake or misunderstanding of simply paradox, political paradox, I started making films. And that was my principal interest in making that film, but they was not very successful. And, I mean, they were successful because there was sometimes they provoked scandal, and of course helped people to talk about that, but not everybody was happy to talk about problems. They preferred to talk about what was going well. So let's say I made both things. I made political commercials and critical films. When the first filmmaker was in prison, I thought it's a good moment to go away. I had to make the film from the CDF. So for a while, I was looking for more money to make that. Well, finally, then I started finding a country, because at that time, all the Latin American countries refused the visa for Chileans. So the only country that accepted was Honduras. So I chose Honduras like a country to make the film, and came there with the money in my pocket and with 20 rolls of films, and I found the camera and I started making film with people from Honduras, and well, in 3 weeks the film was made, and half improvisation, half with trying to play it with to use a structure that I take from the popular poetry in cinema. I put situations who were paradoxical situations, and were connected by this idea of somebody cut it in pieces that it has to be distributed in many parts of the country, making a circle. So it was sort of let's say poetical, metaphorical film, allegorical film. So were original at the time, now it's finished, but at the time was that for filmmakers interested in experimentation, they give industrial as money as normal industrial film. So somebody who were making experimentation was able to have a crew of 40 or 30 persons, 3 months, 2 or 3 months for shooting, like a normal film. Actors, everything. And it was very strange as a result, because normally experimental films, as you know, are film made with no money at all. And so they have some characteristic that everybody supposes as normal characteristic of experimental films. And when you can make an experimental film in CinemaScope, 35 millimeters, 2 months working, well, the result is something quite different. And the Suspended Vocation was made in that way. But many other French films. In a moment that stopped very recently, immediately after the Mitterrand government. For maybe, well, for, I don't know, there were many reasons for that. It was sort of a very odd situation to, and not everybody were happy that spending so much money to make experiment. But the result is that when those experiments stop, immediately somewhere, all the vitality, all the imagination that was, that exists in French cinema disappeared. And the French cinema has become very quickly, in less than 10 years, sort of small boutique with objects that are really boring and with a terrible good taste. And then I became interested in the American way of making film in the 50s, the B film, the so-called B film. And well, I discovered first that was the most inventive, the most strong film made at the time everywhere in the world. And there was a lesson in the way the film were produced. So I started studying that and trying to make something like that, but to be used for experimental, for independent, well, for new films. And so I started this experience in Le Havre, where I tried to make a sort of studio of B-film. We succeed sometimes yes, sometimes not. I didn't make what I wanted to make there. It was to make a structure for young filmmakers who would like to come and make a film if they were able to make a normal film, feature film in 15 days in the same condition of a B-movie of the 50s. And some of them accepted, but curiously they were not very young. The young one refused it. They were waiting for the big opportunity and to make a big film, a normal, serious film. They were afraid not to be taken seriously if they made that kind of films. So I didn't get, nobody accept to make his first film, even if the money was there, even if the equipment, everything was there. And those who accepted were well-known filmmakers, like Oliveira, or like Steve Voskin. Let's call experimental, two kinds of work. One is the poetical work, where you are trying to connect, to give the maximum of richness, of complexity to the image, the connection between image and sound. And this is another research, which is normal research, where you are invented new ways of making films and trying to, let's say, there is one kind of, is the kind of the poetical films. Let's say the research is inconscient. Something happened in the connection with the image, but you are not controlling everything. Simply you are trying to put inside the film the maximum of tension, the complexity of beauty, if you want, of poetry. And there are another kind where you simply are trying to make things to see what happened. In that kind of film, I made, let's say, some were very narrow film. I made the Professor Taran, in my case. Huh? The Professor Taran is a film where there is not continuity of actors. The actors are shooting in a very normal way, like in any TV soap opera. And they are talking between them, saying only, they are changing all the time. So that I wanted to know if changing the actor all the time, you can follow the story. I know that there are two tendencies: those who try to use TV simply as an element, as a tube in the English sense, as subway, to communicate from station A to station B, and other that think that the trip can be funny from station E to B. And I am kind of guys who think that when you travel can be interesting, the travel itself, and not the fact to be very quickly from one place to another place. So in TV, I think the medium can become una opera, a piece, a work, and that you can use many elements for to do that. You can simply make an accident. Well, it's the usual way to work in TV, using TV as a piece of artistic piece. 4 or 5 years ago, I started making theater, and I was in Avignon, where I present the allegorical play Life is a Dream. Not the comedy that everybody knows, but the allegorical one, so the religious plays. And I use for that play what is called theater of memory, the structure of the theater of memory. So all this allegorical structure of the 17th century, like those by Inigo Jones or those by Italian architects, scenographer who make scenographies, set designer. So I use films, and a friend who was very interested in installation and in TV experiment said to me, "But you made an installation. This is not. It's not exactly a mise en scène of a play. It is an installation." So I asked him, "What is an installation?" So and he said, "Well, I will show you some of them." And then he wrote me and showed me things by Viola and by others, and he showed me the work of Nam June Paik. And well, I get interested because of this particular way of mixed theater, this theatrical emotion and cinema. I've been interested before that in Robertson, who made in the 19th century, at the beginning of the French Revolution and during a part of the 19th century, those so-called phantasmagories, or playing with projections. Many of the special effect machines come from that. Were invented by that person. Making projection in smoke, on smoke, making play games with the Chinese lantern, the magic lantern, and Chinese shadows, and mixing actors, noises, music. I was interested by that. I was interested by the mise en scène by Gaspar Friedrich. Gaspar Friedrich. That used to make exhibition of his painting, where landscape, using lighting, special lighting, and music, and sometimes noises. So there were there were installations. I use sometimes a formula, which is not a good one anyway. It's simply to separate a structure where you have where the exterior, the appearance, is enigmatic, and the solution is in the center. And I used to call that Gothic structure. Let's say the Marxism, let's say the psychoanalysis, let's say American films. They are structure, you have a plot, and there is a solution. And the emotion comes when you find the reason why that character did that, or why this appearance of reality, what this phenomena happened. And there is another kind of structure where the pleasure doesn't come from the discovering of the solution, but passing from one level of appearance to another level of appearance. And the first level of appearance is somewhere an answer to the second, but the second can be an answer to the first. So what is important is what the Italian Baroque used to call, the Venetian Baroque call il ponte, the bridge, to pass from one level to another.